Open fire. Now that I have your attention.
Welcome to the Chess Ascendancy podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Chess Ascendancy podcast. This is Josiah, and we're taking a short, little bitty break from our 30 Days of Boba Fett. If you haven't been keeping track of that, please check out those other videos on our channel. But we got a little bit of news, a little bit more rumors than solid news, but it was something worth reporting, I think. So hopefully, maybe you've already heard this before, maybe you haven't, but it's customary pretty much every year that Lucasfilm employees and on-set employees and some of those folks get gifts from Lucasfilm. This year, it's a really, really cool record player that has Lucasfilm Limited on the underside of the box. When you open up, obviously it looks like a little briefcase. When you open that up, on the base plate, you've got your record player, and then on the upper plate, on the inside of this case, it says Lucasfilm Limited. And it's cool because on the sides of the box, they've got shows that people have worked on or shows that the crew have worked on or whatever. So on one side of the box, it says Indiana Jones 5. Underneath that is the Book of Boba Fett. Underneath that is Andor, which is a forthcoming series we know about. And underneath that is Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Makes sense. These are all things we've heard about. On the other side of the box, it has Willow, which obviously we know there's the movie Willow, and I believe they're doing a show kind of backtracking from what happens in that movie. Underneath that, you have Star Wars The Bad Batch, and on the very, very bottom, it says Star Wars Visions. Now, what is in between The Bad Batch and Star Wars Visions is what is important, and that's what this video is about. Because in between those two things, it says Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. You heard me right. It says Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. Now, why is this important? If you are a newcomer to Star Wars fandom, or if you are not someone who has been a hardcore fan, Tales of the Jedi was a series of comics that came out that backtracked way thousands of years before the events of the original trilogy. I want to say it was roughly 4,000 years before that. And it's got some amazing characters, and it kind of tells the story of some of the Jedi of that time and their struggle to find power without falling to the dark side and things like that. And so if this is an upcoming show, whether it's live action or animated, what is this going to look like? Who knows? But I'll give you a little bit of what we can expect if it at all follows the storyline of these comic books that have come out years and years ago. It's crazy to me that some of these comics have come out before some of our, Star Wars fans. I'm 28, so I was already born, but I wasn't that old when these came out. There's some fans out there, if they were born in the year 2000 or later, these comic books are older than them, which is pretty cool. But some of the names that you may have heard or maybe sound familiar, or maybe you've heard of them from other media, other books and things, are names like Ulic Qel-Droma. This was a young man who was a very promising Jedi Knight who struggled and ended up being called to the dark side by none other than Exar Kun. And Exar Kun is a Jedi Knight who struggled, and he's pretty much he's kind of the poster boy for wanting more power and it costing him long-term because he falls to the dark side. Exar was guided by the spirit of a Sith Lord by the name of Freedon Nad. And Freedon Nad would take Exar Kun and he would take him to these other places in Exar's search for power. And the only cure for these obstacles that he would come up against was not more cowbell. Shout out to all the SNL fans out there. But the cure was to dip further into the dark side, to let him go further into the dark side. And ultimately, he is taken to the tomb of Naga Sadow, who is an ancient Sith Lord. And to fully commit to his search for power, he has to commit and basically dive headfirst into the dark side. And he ends up defeating the spirit of Freedon Nad, and he comes out of this tomb and declares himself a Sith Lord. He ends up turning Ulic Qel-Droma to the dark side. Long story short, Exar Kun's defeated, but before he is completely destroyed, he allows his spirit to leave his body, and his spirit is trapped in the temple on Yavin 4. Now, what is tied to this that's also important? Years later, 4,000 years later, the spirit of Exar Kun makes a reappearance on Yavin 4 and tries to corrupt the students of none other than a young, freshly mastered Luke Skywalker, who is the Grand Master of the new Jedi Order. So if the strings connect like they have been since Disney's taken over, especially in the Disney Plus era, the same way that The Mandalorian produces Ahsoka, which talks about Thrawn and the Book of Boba Fett, and all these things are tied together. What if this Tales of the Jedi, you have the spirit of Exar Kun at the end of season 1 or 2 or 3 or however long they do this thing, and it says, similar to what they do at the end of Marvel movies, right? So-and-so will return in this show. What if the spirit of Exar Kun returns and there's a show about the new Jedi Order? Who knows? Maybe there's a Tales of the Jedi. Season 1 is 4,000 years prior, and then season 2 is 4,000 years later, and it's the ancient Jedi and the ancient Sith, and then you fast forward and it's the new Jedi Order with Luke Skywalker. Who knows? But another thing that I think is very, very interesting is a character that you may have heard of from this time is Mandalore the Indomitable. Now, why he's important is because the first Mandalore, the Mandalorians, like we've heard in The Mandalorian, it's not a type of person, it's a creed. So the Mandalorians in Legends were actually a species called the Tong, and Taung, and the Tong were native to Coruscant, and they were basically, there was a war between them and what ended up becoming humans, and the Tong leave and they establish a new homeworld on Mandalore. And I'm not sure if they name it because their leader's name was Mandalore or what the deal is, but their first leader or king, whatever you want to call it, is Mandalore. And so when he dies, a new man takes his place, a new Tong, and puts on the helmet of Mandalore, and he names himself with a title, so he keeps the name, like similar to Caesar, he keeps the name of Mandalore, but he is Mandalore the Indomitable, and then later you have Mandalore the Indestructible, and so on and so forth. But characters like that, Ulic Qel-Drama, Exar Kun, Naga Sadow, Freedon Nad, Mandalore the Indomitable, these are all characters that are in the Tales of the Jedi. So we are definitely in for a treat. It would be very cool to see the Mandalorian culture through Din Djarin and Bo-Katan and Boba Fett and all of these characters way, years and years and years ago, started with the Tong, who were exiled from Coruscant and established themselves on Mandalore. And eventually that species, the Tong, was wiped out. And all the Mandalorians we know of, that especially in canon, are human beings. But at first, it was a wholly different race of people who took up this warlike culture. So these are just a few things that we could look forward to. If you have a favorite memory, if you've read Tales of the Jedi and you're like, bro, you totally dropped the ball, this is the character that we're looking for, let us know in the comments. But I thought it was a really interesting subject. I couldn't wait to make a video. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Chiss Ascendancy, and may the Force be with you.